Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mavs Moneyball After Dark. This is Kirk Anderson and Josh Bowe. It is about 10:30 on Wednesday night, February 15th. The Dallas Mavericks just played their final game before the All-Star break, where they lost to the Denver Nuggets 118-109. How you doing, Josh?
I am thankful that the break has come for us all. That's the best thing I can say, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even unclear how to talk about that game. It's one of the worst basketball games I've ever watched.
I think it's kind of it's a miracle the Mavericks I don't think the Mavericks, I think the Nuggets had one 20-plus point lead. Like, I think they were up 21 for like a minute, and then that was it. Like, if you watch this game without looking at the scoreboard, you would think for most of it the Mavericks were down by like 30 points. Like, so I guess testament to the Mavericks for keeping it closer than they maybe should have. I don't know, but yeah, it was big. I don't know who said it. Someone on Twitter said it, and I apologize, whoever said it. I'm stealing your joke, but it was like big out of office vibes. This game, like setting your Outlook for that office, automatic emails, and trying to sneak out of the office.
I mean, it was one of these games that felt pretty destined when we learned early afternoon that Kyrie Irving appeared on the injury report late with back tightness. He went from questionable to out, which, I mean, there's nothing really to say on this because sometimes your body doesn't feel good and there's really no reason to play if you're not,
especially with a back, if it feels tight,
backs one of those things you don't fuck around with. So when Kyrie was out, it was pretty frustrating at that point of the day, though, because Reggie Bullock was listed as questionable. Christian Wood was listed as questionable with a non-COVID illness, which I don't know what he is doing to get non-COVID illnesses at this rate. But buddy, wash your hands. That's going to be my first thought. Like,
drink more water.
Drink more water. Do something. He's played almost. I think he's played every time. So I shouldn't be too hard on him here, but it is funny because it's like what is a non-COVID illness? Because your mind goes, like, as a parent, my mind goes to like 13 places. As a normal functioning adult, it's like, okay, well, he just probably didn't feel good, and then reported it to the coaching staff, and then they have to talk about it anyway. Both those guys ended up playing, and you thought the Mavericks might have a chance. They actually played okay in the first quarter, and they just got blanked in the second quarter. And they got blanked, and let me tell you guys, it was really shocking how that happened. Luka Doncic wasn't on the floor, and everyone else sucked ass, and that was the ball game.
Yeah, I mean, no Kyrie, no Tim Hardaway Jr., no Maxi Kleber, obviously, and then of course, with the trade for Kyrie, you're down to start, so no Dorian.
Yes.
So like this is probably the most shorthanded they've been in. This might have been the most shorthanded they've been all season.
Might have been right. Yeah.
So yeah, it was one of those things where, like, I'm sure that there's a lot we could maybe nitpick to death, but at the end of the day, I don't know I don't know if there's anything that could have changed the results of this game. And you're right, me and you were a little optimistic before the game started because the Mavericks play Denver well with Luka in the Luka era, and Luka plays Denver well, and with no Aaron Gordon for Denver, who's the only guy on that roster that can do anything against Luka. We're like, okay, maybe Luka scores a billion points and they win. Luka did score a bunch. I mean, he had 37 on 22 shots. He had a really good offensive game, but that was it. No other starter double figures.
That's classic Mavericks. I mean, 3 points from Bullock, 8 points from Powell, 4 points from Frank Ntilikina, which Shout out to Jason Kidd. Outstanding troll job playing Frank Ntilikina. And then Josh Green, 6 points. And it's, yeah.
I mean, it's really funny that the Mavericks had 4 players in double figures, and 2 of those 4 played a combined 25 minutes.
Yeah.
So the only people that played 20 minutes in this game, only 2 of them scored in double figures, Wood and Lucas. So,
well, it's really fun. I mean, this game is just the perfect fodder for the continuing discussion of this team. No other starter had a free throw, so congratulations there, boys. No other Dwight Powell had at least rebound. Luka didn't rebound the ball very well tonight. Also didn't seem to. Luka was ball hunting too. He had 4 steals. I mean, this is just one of those games that felt pretty destined after that first quarter. And I will say it's it's like Kidd is insulating himself from criticism with some of these with some of these rotations that he's playing, because you noted at one point that Theo Pinson and AJ Lawson were sharing the floor together. And that just can't happen. I don't care who else you have on the team. That cannot happen. You cannot have your G League player and then Theo Pinson, who is a G League plus player at best, 0 for 5 from the floor in 20 minutes with 4 assists. Congratulations, big guy. I just, Drew Holiday didn't play at all, and he was available, which I can't say I understand that, because if he's available and getting up shots, it's not like the normal. I hear where Kidd is coming from, because he normally doesn't like to play guys without at least getting a walkthrough in, but they need functional bodies. 13 minutes of McKinley Wright, 12 minutes of AJ Lawson, 24 minutes of Jaden Hardy. I'm sorry, you could have squeezed some minutes from that Stone.
Maybe it was more. I mean, he literally flew in to Denver. He didn't join the team.
No, you're right.
Maybe it was more I don't want this guy to pull a hamstring because he's not physically prepared to play in a game tonight. But yeah, I know what you mean.
That's where I'm this is just Kidd insulating himself from criticism, because he'll be able to throw up his hands and be like, well, I don't know, just didn't have any guys to play. And my brain immediately goes to the fact where it's you had to agree to the Christian Wood trade, because that wouldn't have happened without your okay. Sorry, we just know this because Nico Harrison and he were it's just this sort of thing that ends up challenging me, because he played a role in the roster construction. So he insulates himself from criticism by talking about, okay, and if he does, he may not have anything to say, just because it's All-Star break, where it's, oh, well, a lot of guys out due to injury, which is true. But then the guys who were remaining on the team, he had to agree to be on the team. So I don't know. This is more me whinging at the situation, because I'm to the point to where I find this team really, really not very fun to watch. And I think that has much more to do with All-Star break than anything else. And maybe that's how the Mavericks felt too.
Yeah. I think the big, I think that was pretty evident. Even Denver too. Yeah. It was really funny. Denver really wanted to play that fourth quarter without Jokic going back into the game,
and they had to play him,
and they had to put him back in. I'm sure Mike Mullin isn't yelling at someone in the locker room about that right now. Knowing his temperament. So that was kind of funny. So it was both teams were going through it a little bit there. In terms of what to talk about though, it's really hard, and Christian Wood continuing to be the third big in the rotation. It's weird. I know we both kind of have some conflicting feelings on Wood, but they tried McGee and he had a nice little 2-game resurgence, and then since then it's been nothing. Mm-hmm. And I get the trepidation with Wood. I understand that his agent is a pain in the ass. I understand that he just doesn't play defense. Yeah, when you're missing so many guys, who cares if he can't? No one's guarding the rim.
No, they could have won this game. They really could have won this game if there was any sort of impetus to win, and they just didn't play that way. It was like they're playing to get to All-Star break, and I understand it, but 22 minutes from Wood in a game where you have no help is really maddening.
And you lose by 9. So and he scored what? He had 17 points. He scored, I think, 13 of them in the
classic Christian Wood fourth quarter. Just scoring a ton of points when it doesn't fucking matter is perfect. Now that aside, so I think we can both agree that he needs to play more and earlier. when he does play, he needs to not be soft. He needs to rebound. He needs to box out. He needs to play hard. Thomas Bryant punked him a couple of times.
Yeah, he only had 4 rebounds in 22 minutes. That's not going to cut it.
He doesn't box out. Like, you watch him and he just gets bodied. He has high hips and he's physically weak. But some of it comes from just paying attention, and he doesn't. And like, the discourse the past 2 days, which you and I have managed to avoid mostly, has been like multi-layered, where at the top of it, it's like Kyrie and Luka with a bunch of people like slapping their heads together when, the defense is what matters, followed by whether Christian Wood should play more. There's a story out, I don't even know where he gave the quote, but I saw on DallasBasketball.com where it's like, he's almost surely gone. To which I say, so what? He has played for 8 teams, and we're watching why.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.
I don't know. I find myself very challenged by that level of discourse, because it's like, if you need this guy this much, then your season is not in a good place.
Yeah, I've gone from like, when he had that early, in November when he was really playing well and still kind of getting a minute shaft, I was really like, okay, what's going on here?
Yeah.
But now, since then, he's kind of tapered out a little bit, and his flaws have shown just as much of his strengths.
Sure. And the whole team's flaws have shown. So it's not like he's alone in this.
Yeah. And so like, I've gone from like, oh my God, they have to re-sign him. They can't lose him for nothing, to like, I don't really care anymore.
No,
it's not a big deal to me. But the thing that's just really bizarre is, if this is how they feel about him, and it's very like, we're in the Nerlens Noel zone of like this marriage is over and we're just trying to ride this out to the finish line, Mm-hmm. Like, I don't understand why they didn't just trade him for scraps. Like,
I can answer that question. Mark Cuban feels the need to win every possible trade. When he doesn't win trades, they don't make trades.
Yeah.
Like the Nico quotes about Kyrie and such, where it's like, we saw no risk in this move. I mean, we've not really talked about this stuff because I'm trying to like not lose my shit over it. But
that's just public facing GM talk.
It's public, yeah. It's exactly what it is, and that's fine. Where it's just, they weren't able to trade. They weren't able to trade Wood because there was no return for Wood. They were not able to trade Hardaway because there was no return for Hardaway. People were probably, I can't say this for certain, demanding assets for both. That's how not good they are.
Couldn't even dump them for a couple of second rounders or a second rounder or something like that.
When you see how many second rounders were traded on a day like that, and the fact that the Mavericks weren't involved, that should say a lot to all of us.
I think our staffer, Ben Zadell, made a good point that maybe it was simply not that they couldn't get like a second rounder for him, but that they just couldn't find a good money deal, because obviously you have to,
the salaries are difficult,
right? Like maybe a team offered them something, but it was like, you're going to have to take back this crappy salary for the next 2 or 3 years, and the Mavericks,
we want like Hardy or something,
or maybe the Mavericks, like, and if it's the choice between trading Christian Wood for some second rounders and then a contract that goes 2 or 3 more years that you don't want, I get it then. So maybe that's why. But it's just so weird to see the disconnect, because like, it's obvious kid doesn't want him on the team.
No.
And it's just so, and I just hate that. Like, maybe there reaches a point where it's like, okay, maybe we do take the L and we trade him for like an undesirable contract, because what if, I don't know, I'm not going to say it's going to happen, because he's actually been pretty good with his public comments, but like, it just can't be good for the locker room to have that kind of tension hanging around,
Mm-hmm.
It's just weird.
Well, and what we're seeing to a degree, and I'm projecting, I know nothing, but I have read a lot. And so it drives me crazy when people tell me things that are on public record are not true, where it's like, there's an entire book about Giannis Antetokounmpo where you see Jason Kidd's actions. There's a lot of reported work done about Kidd's time in Brooklyn, about how It's just he was a difficult coach. There was a reason he was out of the league for a year. Jeannie Buss saved his coaching career. No one wanted him. The Mavericks were the only team to offer him a head coaching stint. We have to acknowledge these things, okay? And so what we're sort of seeing to a degree is how Kidd treats the back half of a roster, which he treats it as expendable because, and I'm going to be candid, he's not wrong, but it still sucks to watch. That's all. It sucks to watch. Like, I don't want to see Wood treated this way, but anybody who thinks that it's surprising has not been paying attention.
Yeah. I mean, it happened. I mean, this happened, right? But in training camp, like, it's been like this since training camp. I remember, like, Kidd was like, Wood's not going to start. And I was like, huh? Like, excuse me? Like, he's literally your biggest move of the offseason. And back then, you know, pre-Kyrie trade, when everyone's looking at this roster minus Jalen Brunson, and it's like, how are you going to compete like with this talent downgrade unless you start Christian Wood? And they were like, nope. And he never did really until he kind of had to when there were some injuries and McGee was just so unplayable at certain stretches and Maxi Kleber got hurt. But other, like, you know, it's been kicking and screaming with Kidd with trying to get Wood where we think his minutes should play. And then the thing that sucks is like we find ourselves arguing about this guy who's just not mattered in the NBA for 7. You know what I mean? Like it feels so silly to waste this energy on this guy who, talented as he is, like he's not making or breaking your season. You know,
he's really not. He's really not. And then and like we know enough now because it's been like you and I know this. I know this in particular, but like we know that his agent has been driving people up a wall. Like that has been all but said in repeated articles to a degree. He messaged me, last time he messaged me was Christian Wood is the greatest player Luka Doncic has ever played with.
Yeah, that's the last one I got too.
L-O fucking L. So it's
funny.
Like you have these like unstoppable force meets immovable object in terms of just people being butt heads, and you just roll your eyes at it where team building is so freaking difficult. I understand that. But then it's like when you talk about these moves and you go from one to another and it's like, how did they do this? Why would they agree to this if this was the outcome?
Yeah. And what makes it even weirder with the Wood discussion is it's like they traded the 26 overall pick and you look, you know, you can look at the draft and be like, well, it doesn't look like they're missing too bad. Like there's maybe like 3 or 4 names that you think about. But Nico's already been on the record saying they would have picked Hardy at 26. So like,
which, I mean, I just like, okay, sure.
Which
I don't hate it.
That's not even a reach. He was projected to be in the 15 to 20, you know, to 30 range. So like that wouldn't have been a bad pick. So like, think about it. If that would have happened, like if they didn't do the Wood trade and they picked Hardy at 20, like the roster is the same just without Wood. Like they're not out any assets. So it's like it truly might be the kind of trade where they really didn't really lose anything for it other than just kind of creating a headache for us watching it. But so that's what makes it even harder to talk about because like, you know, if they traded away, if Hardy was like, let's say they already had that second, like they didn't need to trade into the second round, then you're like, okay, they lost the chance to draft another young player basically, but they didn't. You know, they traded up to get, they traded back into the draft to get Hardy. They said they were going to pick Hardy if they didn't trade the pick. So like it sucks, but it's like you're not really, like if they lose this trade, they're not really losing anything, if that makes sense. So that makes all the hubbub about it even more bizarre, you know?
Yeah.
It's just weird. And there's not much else to talk about in a game like this.
No, there's not. And you wonder, I do want to address one thing. So Kevin O'Connor went on his Ringer podcast show and basically said that he doesn't think this works for the Mavericks, meaning trading for Kyrie. And he said the Mavericks have no depth, no coaching, no defense. And I spent not a good chunk, but enough of today talking to a couple of friends who that really upset. And I'm sitting here going, why? They don't have good depth. They don't have good coaching. They aren't able to play good defense. That aside, you understand from not you, meaning that like we as fans understand that when you have 2 of the best players in the NBA on the court, some of that shit just doesn't matter, right? Like that's kind of the plan, at least for this season, right?
Yeah, I think so. The Kyrie trade kind of felt like before the Durant trade that happened, it did kind of feel like hey, the West is wide open. Let's do this. Let's just talent this up, and we need to do this for Luka anyway.
Yeah.
And then after the Durant trade, it kind of felt like, okay, maybe next summer is when they can put it together, because it's just going to be really hard. Like you said, they traded two starters for one. Yeah,
I don't like.
You can't fix a team at one trade deadline, and there's a lot to fix.
See,
right?
Yes, and that's the key, and that's where it's just like this is a step in a process, and maybe it's a step forward, maybe it's a step back in the long term. But I at least understand why they took the trade. So it's just like the Kristaps Porzingis thing. I didn't like that trade either. Okay, but I understood the swing. And so you have to make these swings, and then at a certain point, you hope you have to connect. That's why I keep saying team building is very hard. I get very upset because when these things don't work, and I'm told, well, it did work.
Who could have predicted that?
Who could have predicted the thing that was clear? Which, if Kyrie goes to the Lakers, we're going to be talking about that. I'm sorry, that exists. But right now, I have no reason to think that, because I've enjoyed sort of the games we've seen played. So the path now is to let these guys go, experience All-Star break, maybe regather, some of their sense a little bit. The main thing, and my friend Jazz pointed this out today, where it's just they've not been able, they don't have any time together, really. There's been zero practice. And it's maybe we need to sort of settle down a little bit before we really, figure out whether or not this team can or can't play. I'm not.
They haven't had their full complement of rotations since the first week of December.
Yeah.
So, Dorian, I think Josh got hurt, then Dorian got hurt, then Maxey got hurt, and since Dorian and Josh come back, Maxey's still hurt. Luka gets hurt. Dorian gets traded. Tim gets hurt. Maxey's still they haven't played. They haven't had a game where they're all right, we got all our horses. So maybe they come out of the other side of this All-Star break. Maybe Tim's ready, although, hamstrings can be tricky. I mean, just look at Zion Williamson. He's been hurt for a while. So you hope maybe Tim's ready. You hope, Kyrie should be okay. Luka should be well rested, because, it's pretty obvious that the heel thing was probably still bothering him a little bit.
He came down once and kind of limped up the floor that way.
Yeah,
I've been thinking about that.
Yeah. So maybe if you come out of this All-Star break and Tim's healthy and maybe Maxey's healthy, I think Maxey has been saying post All-Star break, maybe it's a couple of weeks afterwards, maybe it's the end of February, but once they get to that point, then it's okay, let's see. But what sucks is it's once they get to that point, there's going to be 15 games left in the regular season. It's how are you going to be able to judge a team based off that short amount of time? So this is why, I can't believe I'm saying this again, but this is why when the team was healthy in October and November,
they needed to win more.
Yeah, they needed to win more. I think someone tweeted at me that they were 14-13 when Maxey got hurt. And they've been 17-16 since. So it's obviously Maxey hurts, but they've still kind of been the same team a little bit in a couple different ways, although the defense has really fallen off. But so it stinks, and it's be patient, get these guys back, and that's true. But they're eighth, and it's if they finish in the play-in, that's when it's okay, now you're playing with fire, because you have one bad night where you shoot 20% from three, irregardless of what the other team is doing. You just happen to have a cold night, and your season's over. So. Yep. The goal for I think this team is just get healthy over the All-Star break and just get to 6. They have I know that this team probably has grander aspirations than that, but they just have to get out of the play-in. They just have to figure out a way to do that in the second half of the season. We'll see if they can.
So I wanted to make one more point, because I was told this today, and I need to share it because I think it's good. My friend Jazz, smart lady, said a number of things to me today, and I wrote a number of them down, and I wanted to credit her to it, where she said, when we're talking about the Luka Kyrie offense, which all of us understand that it's going to be okay. The discourse has gotten ugly because people are odd, but she made the point of saying, Luka has played a certain way for 5 years. So it's going to take it's going to take more than a week for him to figure out how to do things differently. Right. And I thought that was really good.
Yeah, and by the way, in those 5 games, when they're on the floor, they're scoring a shit ton of points, despite the fact that they're still figuring it out. So, yeah, that part will be fine.
Just a weird, yeah. You know what? We got All-Star break. I'm going to figure out some people to talk to during it. I don't really care about Friday or Saturday. I am going to watch the game though, because
Luka and Kyrie.
Luka body language during All-Star games is one of my favorite things. It's actually if you can find time to watch the practice, which is usually on NBA TV, and that's on Saturday, is really cool. It's really cool because it just shows these guys BSing together, and that's fun.
Yeah. And I appreciate that Luka has carried the torch from Dirk Nowitzki of being like the best player on the planet that doesn't do anything in All-Star
because
games.
It's entirely like shot dependent. And you remember when Dirk got in during his sort of like send-off party, him and D Wade, and like Dirk actually, that was the best All-Star game Dirk might have ever played when he was 40 years old because he just hit buckets finally.
Yeah, because the All-Star games are about dunks and threes, and like Dirk obviously shot threes, but he just kind of,
it's a rhythm thing. Like you miss your first 2, you're not going to get more shots. So if like Luka comes out and like connects on one of these games, I wouldn't be shocked if he actually has a good All-Star game at some point during his career, but his game is not made for it.
All right, and to kind of sum everything up, I just saw someone asked Luka in the post game what he looks forward to playing in his 4th NBA All-Star game, and he said Sunday when I fly to Mexico. So
LOL. Great stuff, Luka. Great. The NBA has really done a great job of making sure people are not interested in their product. This sort of stuff. Us hardcore lunatics are going to keep coming back, but like the casual fan, like what a turnoff. Thanks, Luka. Shout out to you, big guy. All right, this has been Kirk and Josh. Come to Mavs Moneyball. We got a couple interesting posts up, but we're all pretty dragging ass too. So we'll see how we do the next couple of days, and hopefully we'll see you guys at some point when we do a live show. Maybe I'll do something after the All-Star game. Everybody be good, and we'll talk soon. Go Mavs.